Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. Okay. Well, this is it. So this is everything. Sitting on Zoom, talking, breathing, looking is all there is. And there is nothing else. There is no possibility there could be anything else. So that's it, really. There is no message. There is no teaching, no advice, no agenda, nothing that has to be gotten out of these meetings or realized or recognized. Nothing has to or could die or fall away or be understood or seen through for this to be what it is. So this sitting on Zoom, breathing, talking is whole and complete naturally, just as it is. So in that sense, the suggestion here then is all there is this, which is just what appears to be happening. It's neither real nor is it unreal. It's simply just what appears to be happening. But no one or nothing could confirm this apparent happening either way. But of course, what seems to arise as part of this, or what also seems to happen, one could say, is there seems to be this apparent experience that this is happening to me. So sitting on Zoom is happening to me. And of course, this so-called me simply doesn't exist. So the suggestion here is that this is a dream, an illusion, you could say, that just simply never happens. There is no one already, so to speak. So there's nothing to say really, but that's me done as an introduction, if you like. And yeah, we can sit in silence, we can have a conversation. Anyone is always welcome to speak through the microphone or in the chat. And yeah, let's just see what happens. Hiya. Oh, just unmute 1 second. Ah, yeah. Hello.
Yeah, hiya. I just wanted to ask, a lot of speakers say real and unreal, and I wonder, could you sort of maybe unpack that a little bit? Sort of the tangibility and the able to touch things and feel things, and gives a real sense of reality. Yeah, I had an awakening which lasted about, I had an awakening that lasted about, I'm sure, 2 hours. I think it's very hard to know. And I didn't know what it was at the time until I went to see Tony Parsons, and when that awakening, so to speak, was going on, you could sort of see that the intangibility of things, but it seems very touchable and real now, you know. I just wonder, could you say something about that? Because it's that was 20 years ago, so and it seems like a bit of a curse now, because on one hand there's some sort of memory of it, albeit that the me wasn't there during the whole thing, but there's that memory. But then there's this, I'm touching a table now and speaking towards a phone. So maybe you could say something about that, is it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, real and unreal. I mean, in a sense, even, I mean, nothing can be said about this, so to speak. So nothing can be said about sitting on Zoom, apparently sitting on Zoom. There just are no words. So to actually sort of say it's real and it's unreal, sometimes it sort of seems a bit more suitable, one could say, to say that it's not real, but it's not unreal either. Because of course, saying it's even real or it's unreal seems to sort of be saying something about it, which obviously just is totally impossible. And I mean, in this sense, there's not much to expand on that, really. It just is what appears to be happening is not real, but it's not unreal. So there's no one or nothing that could confirm, let's say, whether speaking on Zoom is happening or whether it's not happening or not. So it's just totally ambiguous in this sense. I mean, the whole apparent happening is ambiguous, you could say. I'm not sure if that's the best word, but in the sense of it just can't be said for sure. Nothing can be said for sure in this way. So it's not a confirmation, but it's not a denial. Sitting on Zoom is just what's appearing to happen. But of course, when there seems to be something that feels itself to be exclusively real, so me, I am real, then sitting on Zoom feels exclusively real as well. So it can't see the unreal side, you could say. It only takes it to be truly real or a true reality. And of course, hearing things like real, unreal, I think my impression is the person can seem to create stories around these things like touch or taste or sound. So these sort of senses and sensations, and thinking, okay, well, if they're unreal, do they just disappear, or will I be able to, my hand will go through the table, and all of these sort of funny things. And I mean, of course, it's just totally normal. So the body appears to just touch objects, so-called objects, but there's just absolutely no sense of there being anyone doing that.
Yeah. Okay. It's strange, because there are times when speaking that the voice doesn't seem to belong to anyone. It's just a voice. Did you ever have that? It's like when I'm speaking to, say, my son or my wife, it's like the voice is coming out of nowhere and it doesn't belong to anyone.
Exactly, totally. Nothing belongs to anyone.
So it's I suppose those are like little mini awakenings or something like that, but and then you go back to, this is my voice. the so-called, the seemingly default position of meanness. So
exactly, in that sense, I mean, as you say, there can seem to be these more significant glimpses or so-called awakenings, you could say, but there also seem to be these little insights like this sort of thing, and the person can also sometimes see a picture of themselves, so to speak, or of the body, and it can be quite clear that's not me in that sense. But of course it then, it will create a whole story out of this, that I am the awareness or whatever, but there's just no one. There's just an apparent body speaking, doing what a body does.
yeah, it's funny because I'm due to go to Dublin next week. I'm in Northern Ireland. I had to see Kenneth Madden, and there's already a story about I'm going to Dublin and what am I going there for? because there's no one to go and nothing to get when I get there. But if you know what I mean, it's like a wasted trip.
Well, in one sense.
Wasted trip. You know, because there's a desire for me to go there and get something. If there's that sort of underlying, well, if you like, at a conceptual level, there's an understanding of this, but there's still a desire to go there and have some outcome from going to Dublin, or else why would I be bothering to it's wonderful. And it'll be great crack, it'll be good fun, but strange. Do I unmute now, or what do I do?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Nice to speak with you.
This is one of my first times doing this, so I'm not entirely technically with it,
Oh, that's okay. Nice to have you here.
Can you stay unmuted, or do you? It doesn't matter, does it?
No, I can mute you.
You can shut me up. I think my wife would like one of those buttons. Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I love your hair. I sent you a message. My wife has exactly the same hair as yours, and she straightens it every day. On a very rare occasion do I get to see it like yours, and it's lovely. And I'd say to her, stop straightening that hair, but she won't have it, Thank you, Izzy.
Thank you.
Hello, Izzy.
Hiya.
Are human beings robots?
Well, in this sense, there are no human beings, one could say. So all there is there appears to be apparent bodies that we seem to be labeled human beings. But I mean, of course, there is no answer to this question in this sense of what we call human beings and what we call robots. But in the sense of there is no one inside, one could draw a similarity. But of course, that with a robot, so to speak, there seems to be this, I don't know too much about all this, but this artificial software, you could say, it seems to be programmed by something. So of course, with the apparent body, there's no one or nothing bigger that is programming it. It's just programming running on its own, you could say.
When you think about, bodies, people, right? Do you consider there are so many cells inside the body, and there is a heart and everything, and they are all working together to maintenance and keep this body alive? Do you have this conception of the body, or do you think that it is just what is observed?
Well, I mean, of course, it's just what appears to be happening, the apparent body. And, apparent science and things like this tell us that the body is made up of, cells, the heart, the liver, all the organs, etc., that, the body breathes, digests food, etc. But this is, again, just what appears to be happening. So in this sense, there's no sort of scientific view and then this apparent view. I mean, this isn't a view in this sense. So science and scientific discoveries are just what appear to be happening. Hello.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to ask, is there an energy about these meetings? Because I've heard people say in the past, and I think I've heard you say, there is a sort of an energy or something that occurs during these meetings, or there's something. I've heard people say it's the sort of starving of the sense of separate self, or whatever. There seems to be an energy about these meetings, and certainly being from Northern Ireland, there isn't any non-duality, and nobody speaks about non-duality in Northern Ireland. Not that I found anyone anyway, but there seems to be an energy just getting a chance to talk about this stuff, and just to speak with other people around the whole subject. Do you find that, or did you find that prior to the apparent falling away?
I mean, you could say so, yeah, but this seems already to me like a story, you could say. I mean, this word energy, I think
Yeah,
it seems to somehow attempt to capture, you could say, the sort of resonance that seems beyond the words, that you could say seems to maybe be sensed in these meetings, one could say, but in terms of sort of any transmission of energy, I mean, of course,
no.
Yeah. but
even that word resonance is strange. I mean, I don't know what resonance is. All I know is I seem to if I spend a week without listening to non-duality and I say I'm not going back there, I end up back there. So there's something, call it energy, call it whatever it is, and something lovely about the simplicity of your meetings that I've watched recently. That just seems to draw something here, whether that's what you could call energy or whatever. But it's
I mean, the person, and this was certainly the case for me as well, there seems to almost be this love-hate relationship with this message, with this apparent message, like you sort of say, never wanting to come back and then also coming back anyway. So it for the person, it can seem quite addictive. And actually I found that a little bit in terms of wanting to hear this almost. I mean, it felt, for the person, it can feel quite reassuring, I think, in a sense, because it's sort of almost, it's wanting that permission to just, this is it. Okay. Well, Izzy says this is it. Okay, I can relax. I don't have to seek for an hour or whatever on this meeting. And of course, this is totally energetic. So there's no one who could stop or start seeking because there's no one already. But there seems to, you could say, I mean, this is unconditional love, so to speak. So the person, although it can reject this or seem to reject this in favor of seeking, of course, this love, one could say, could be sensed beyond the words, beyond even wanting to talk in the meetings, just to sort of, just to be in a meeting, you could say. There seems to be a love for that. I mean, I don't know, it's a complete story, but
I remember Jim Newman saying prior to the apparent falling away, it was he knew it felt like home, and he knew it wasn't home, but it was
exactly.
as close as he could get. And I've always sort of felt that as well. While it's not liberation, it's as close to home, or it's not home, it's as close to home as you can get almost. There's a comfort,
Totally.
comfort in it. And I suppose non-duality has been to me some sort of therapy in regards. It sort of sweeps away all the crap of life, in a sense. When you hear someone say, well, you're not even speaking there, or whatever, you get it right between the eyes, but it's sort of, well, at least all this crap isn't happening to anyone if you like, so.
I mean, exactly. And in this sense, I mean, of course, this is home already for no one. Everything is home in this sense already for no one. And so the person, one could say, I mean, obviously already a story because there is no one, but it seems the apparent person can sense this, you could say. And almost, as you say, sort of can sense that what is being suggested here is home, or that already this is home. But of course, as you say, the person will never get home, because there is no person in home. There's no one home, so to speak. So it's sort of, it's very comforting for the person, the apparent person, but also can be quite painful, because it will never get home.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you. It's beautiful. My wife always says the lights are on, but no one's in when she looks at me. So.
Oh.
But yeah, maybe she's right.
Well.
They are, but it's funny speaking about this, because I suppose in England there's lots of meetings and lots of people speaking about this, but you know, because it's a bit isolated over here, it is just lovely to get to speak, just to talk about it, because you certainly don't raise it. I was chatting to someone this morning who was talking about Christianity, and I thought, if I was to say what my interest was, I'd be you wouldn't be speaking to me for long. You know, people don't want to speak about this.
Oh no, exactly. I mean, for so-called, well, I mean, not even going to say, but in terms of everyday conversation, so to speak, this sort of message, let's say, is totally wild and mad. I mean, you know, the so-called everyday person would think this is total madness, of course.
Absolutely. It's not something to bring up at parties.
I mean, exactly. It's probably best to assess the situation.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I've had a couple in the chat. How to cut a circle of addiction from a non-dual point of view? Well, of course, the person, one could say, is addiction. So, of course, there's no possibility to cut such a circle of addiction, because it doesn't even begin in this sense. So it can't end. It's just an empty, apparent loop, you could say, just going round and round and round. And there's, of course, no one inside that loop already, or that apparent loop, who is addicted or who has an addiction. There's just addiction, one could say, apparent addiction. And actually, of course, there seem to be these more obvious addictions, one could say, you know, drink, drugs, alcohol, shopping, etc., where it might be more obvious externally that there's an apparently addicted body or something like that. But of course, the person, whether it's sort of a more extreme case like that or not, is addiction anyway. Addicted to itself, you could say. So whether that, you know, seems more obvious, like something like drug addiction, or if it's not obvious at all in that sense, the sense of a person is the sense of addiction, constantly needing something more out of life, out of this moment, out of this apparent meeting, out of Izzy, constantly wanting to get something. So there's just no answer to that, because there is no real addiction in the first place. And another one in the chat, is there a choice for us to engage or not engage with every thought that arises, if that can help in reducing suffering? Well, of course not, no, because there is no you. So there is no one who could even choose to engage or not engage with a thought as a means to reduce suffering or anything like that. No, there just is no one already. So this whole idea of even being able to engage in thoughts or witness thoughts or become aware of thoughts, this already is illusory. It's just awareness in this sense is totally impossible. There just is no one who could be aware or who could witness or engage. It's just a total dream.
Hello, Izzy.
Hiya.
I want to ask a very similar question. For example, like there is the bodily sensation of Izzy there, right?
Apparently.
Yeah, like body is sitting on the chair and all that air temperature and everything. Now, wouldn't you say that there is something experiencing those sensations? Because how can perception happen without two things? You know, like a perceiver and the perceived. How can there be just the sensation and not be anything? How would that appear, so to speak?
Well, of course, there is no how, just like there is no why. There just is no answer to that. And the one that, or the apparent one that seems to want the answer to that already doesn't exist. So what is, if you like, a body, an apparent body sitting on a chair, touching, feeling, it just is what it is. It can't even ask itself this question. How or why. So already it's a non-starter, you could say. So of course there just is no perception or experience of sitting on a chair. There's just full on an apparent body sitting on a chair. This apparently artificial layer that never happens is this sense that I can perceive this, or I can experience this, or witness this. And of course, then that's the apparent birth of all these questions. Well, how do I perceive, or why am I aware, or how do I become liberated, or whatever? So.
And would you say that this apparent thing that never happens, it's sort of a hypnosis that happens when we are like 2-3 years old? We are hypnotized into believing this, and this hypnosis carries on till, you know, like we are very old. Is it some sort of like societal hypnosis, do you think?
I mean, if you wanted to use this word hypnosis in place of sort of dream or illusion, then sure. But of course, there's no one who is hypnotized, and also no bigger thing that is hypnotizing anyone in that sense, because this apparent dream never actually happens. But I mean, hypnosis, if you want to use that as sort of an interchangeable word with the apparent dream or illusion, then sure. Yeah, but of course there is no actual hypnosis then in that sense. Nor is there a bigger what is that is hypnotizing or becoming hypnotized. I mean, it just doesn't happen.
Hi, Izzy.
Hello.
I remember the first time I heard you speak. Obviously, it was on a Zoom call. Didn't come to me in a dream or anything. You mentioned that you'd had there was an experience through the non-journey of hearing a bird as if it was kind of inside you, rather than, you know, an external event. I think she said something like that. I remember 7-8 years ago, I woke up one morning, and I have a process. I never open my eyes when I wake up. I just like to feel and listen. And I heard this bird, and it was so apparent that it wasn't outside. It was so obvious that it was inside, and it was so beautiful. I mean, I just cried, you know. It was just, there was an overwhelming sense of, how is that even possible? And I remember the times through meditation when I'd suddenly hear a breath, and it would bring me out of this sense of wherever I was, and I'd kind of realized that I was hearing the breath not as a Paul, but as a something beyond that. And it was so bizarre to hear this breath as if somebody else was in the room with me and I'm hearing it, but it was the breath coming from this body. And that disconnect is just ridiculous. But it also feels, 8 years ago, and then you get these glimpses and you follow them, and then you let go of them and you keep going, and it feels like a process. And I know that's the illusion, that sense of movement through time, when it's obvious for a lot of the time that there is no time at all. It's very, very obvious. When I look and I see this body, it's very obvious that the body's not mine, but there's still a sense of body awareness. And that shifts around quite a lot. Some days it's looking, go, wow, what's that hand doing? Then other days, it's like, I don't know, because the question I get asked a lot is, surely there's a practice, surely there's something that we can do, And my immediate response is, no, there isn't. And then I'll lapse into kind of some sort of coaching, because I used to coach people and say, but if you spend a bit more time spaced out, you spend a bit more time listening to the message, But it's so contradictory, isn't it? It's like, it does feel like being around the message gets you somewhere, even though there's no one to get anywhere or anywhere to go to. But it does feel like something's happening at the same time. But then you go to look, for instance, to look to see if something's happening, and there's nothing there. So I don't know, just one wonderful contradiction from beginning to end.
Oh, totally, in this sense, of course. And the person is contradiction, you could say. So it's this, there is no paradox in this sense. The sense of there being a contradiction or a paradox or two is the sense of the person, of course. So there just seems to be an apparent love for listening to this message, one could say. But of course, for the person, this always seems two-sided. So there's this apparent love, but then also, even if it's subtle, what can I get out of this?
Yeah, and it is subtle. Yeah, definitely. There's, tiny little threads of meism going through it. Bit of beism, and it's sense and seen, and you're like, and there's no escaping it in that sense. And I guess that's what's still desired, is the escape from the meism, and that genuine sort of just. And it is those experiences I've had where I've not been here have all been quite terrifying. I mean, in one way, they really have. Sense of kind of slapping the concrete and trying to realize what's going on or who's there, and it's like, yeah, it's overwhelming. And then you realize, well, why is it overwhelming? And then it's this whole story that's overwhelming rather than anything that's going on. So, but it is a beautiful message. It shouldn't be, but it does feel today, and most days, it does feel like both sides of the coin are being seen and witnessed, rather than just one, rather than nihilism or bliss. It's just, oh, okay. But yeah, the pendulum still swings, and it's still funny. But thank you for sharing the message.
Thank you. Nice to connect.
Likewise.
In the chat. Hi, Izzy, no questions right now, just profound appreciation for you and everyone here. Thank you very much, Constance. And another question. What is your reaction to all the horrible suffering that goes on in this world? Well, of course, there is no one who actually suffers, and there is no world. So, I mean, of course, this body may see the news and so-called react or comment on that. I mean, totally normal in this way, but there's not this personal sense. I mean, there's not any sense. So this sort of sense of the person with maybe watching something on the news or seeing the suffering and thinking, oh, that how terrible that is, you know, that person's affected. This isn't replaced by then, you know, no one not caring or anything like that. It's just not replaced by anything. So there's just an apparent body, and it may get upset by watching something. It may not even watch something. I mean, it's totally normal. But of course, this apparent suffering isn't actually happening. So I guess you could say this sense of having to or needing to change or intervene, or that it's not right in this way, in a sort of deep way, this whole setup just seemed to collapse. But this isn't, of course, saying that the body then takes pleasure or anything weird like that in seeing so-called others suffering. No, it's just totally normal. And there may be whatever wants to make change or intervene or help, but this just naturally happens on its own. There's already no one behind that or doing that. But these so-called behaviors seem to relax, one could say, a little bit, because of course a lot of the time this apparent helping or activism or protesting or whatever for better rights seems to always come from this apparent me. So even if it's helping another, that already there's someone thinking there is another to help, which then thinks it will look good for me, or it will make me feel better or me feel whole if I help someone else. So yeah. Okay, another one in the chat. Is putting energy into a certain work will be all in vain? I'm trying to find motivation here. I think I understand. So, well, in this sense, nothing is in vain, in the sense there's no wasted energy in that sense, because there's no actual energy. And there's no one who's putting energy into anything. But of course, if this, you could say, is heard, of course, there's nothing to here, but the apparent person can seem to live its so-called life with all of these hopes, desires, and motivations, and its sort of purpose for life, one could say, is to get somewhere or get something out of life for itself, to get a better job. So, you know, that's my purpose, to wake up in the morning or whatever. So when this is seen through, you could say, or apparently seen through, a lot of these motivations can just seem to collapse like that. The emptiness, you could say, is just obvious in that they're not going to provide any personal fulfillment, because personal fulfillment already is a dream. But of course, there's nothing right or wrong with anything. So there's nothing wrong with motivation. There's nothing right with motivation. It's just what appears to happen. Feeling motivated, feeling less motivated. Hi, David. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, good. Is that okay?
Yeah, hi.
I'm learning. Do you feel more energy in the body now? It strikes me that that being a me is bloody exhausting. Sort of, you know what I mean. I watch people running around day and daily trying to improve their lives, as it were, and there's certainly guilty of that here as well. It's absolutely exhausting. Exhaustion. It's like sometimes I go to bed at night and I think all I want to do is stop this for a while. Just, you know, the old saying, "Stop the world, I want to get off." You maybe don't know that old saying. You just feel like that at times, that this me, it's just absolutely exhausts. And is there more energy there now since the apparent since the apparent Izzy dropped away? Or I don't know.
I mean, in this sense, it's totally impossible to tell. There is no, the one who could have possibly compared, let's say, or noticed that there was more energy is dead. So, I mean, I guess as a story, you could say the body seems to be lighter in this sense of it doesn't seem to be, I mean, there still seems to be neuroses, let's say, just as sort of patterns and conditioning, but there seems to be a general relaxation around them, and of course no sort of no one who's reinforcing them, let's say. So in that sense, you could say that there's just a lightness, but I wouldn't necessarily say that sort of all that so-called me energy is then creates more energy or whatever. I mean, what one could say is just there is no longer this illusory layer of the additional effort, you could say. So in that sense, then what appears to be happening, the body just functioning, is totally natural. Which, seen of course as a story already, seen from the apparent me, could be seen to be more energized. But I mean, there's of course just no experience of this, so yeah, just totally natural. The body gets tired, you know, it's not sort of this then really energized and really happy all the time. I think this is what the person would possibly imagine. But of course, this apparent treadmill that the me seems to be on, that's not even going anywhere, and there's no one on it, is just no longer happening. So in that sense, that effort, of course, is just no longer appearing, and it never was.
Yeah, it just seems to be so exhausting. And then there's, you know, you fill in, there has to be a story about, you know, there's a, you know, am I unwell or something because I need to go to bed at 9:30 at night or something like, and it wants to fill in a story about that, even, you know, and create a story around that. And
Exactly.
am I getting somewhere? Because I've lost interest in the world, you know, all that. I'm going to use the word crap. And that's really what it is.
Oh, exactly. And the apparent person always seems to have to be on top, or want to be on top of what appears to be happening.
Oh yes.
It's always sort of narrating, you know, I'm coming, or it feels it's coming to this meeting. Why am I doing that? What's the purpose? Will I come next week? When's Izzy's next meeting? Or shall I watch a YouTube video instead? Like all of these sorts of questions, just constant analysis, one could say, of what appears to be happening, which never actually happens, of course.
It never happens. What's, can you unpack that?
Well, in the sense of this additional layer is just not happening. Just totally, there's just no one in it, no one doing it, no one listening to it.
Right, okay. Yes, there's no one on this call at all.
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh, bloody. And there's no one going to watch Ireland beat England today.
No.
I want to see what your reaction to that was. Anyway, thank you. Well, no one will be cheering.
No one will even be playing.
No one to blame if it goes wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mute myself. Mute myself. God.
Hi, Brendan. Oh, let me just unmute. I think you need to unmute your end. There we go.
Hi, Izzy.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
I'll certainly be cheering today for Ireland. Waste never happens.
Waste, as in what we were saying, wasted energy in this sense?
Yeah.
Oh, of
yeah.
course not. There is no energy in the first place that could or couldn't be wasted or used productively or any of this. No.
I know this isn't, although David's out, I can see him there. Just in terms of what David raised, I know this isn't an information exchange, but there is a woman in London, David, who would like to speak in Northern Ireland, who comes from Northern Ireland on non-duality. Her name is Dawn Garland, and you can look her up. And she's from Northern Ireland, because you said there was nobody in Northern Ireland. And the other piece of information is that there's an American ex-Carmelite nun called Bernadette Roberts, who wrote a book called The Real Christ. And you might be able to wave that around in Northern Ireland, because you expressed concern about Christianity in Northern Ireland. Herself dropped away. Thank you, Izzy.
Thanks, Brendan. David is going
Yeah,
to...
just to say, if I go waving books by ex-Carmelite nuns around in Northern Ireland, there is a healing process, but we haven't gotten that far yet. So you just don't go there. Thanks very much, Brendan. Oh dear.
Yeah, I've got one more in the chat. So everything will just be for the essence of itself. Work just for work, sport, relationships, not neediness of me behind it as a motivation. Exactly, in this sense, yeah. The apparently illusory need that was never actually there apparently collapses. So there's just what appears to be happening. And what is just what is. It has no experience, knowledge, or understanding of itself. So like you say, yeah. Work, just work, apparently. Sport, relationships, going to the beach, going to the shops, dinner with friends. Just totally what appears to be happening. All ready for no one and just blindly and perfectly itself. And it doesn't need anything. This idea of need already comes from this apparent illusion. That this needs to be a certain way, or this needs to have a reason. Just a total, I mean, what is obviously just cannot have any need or reason. Totally impossible, not even a question in this sense. For the separate character living in duality, can the non-dual message help in making life more bearable? Well, of course, I mean, one could say so in this sense. Of course, this would be a total misunderstanding, let's say, because of course there just already is no one, and no one for whom so-called life could or couldn't be bearable. But one could say that this apparent message seems to have a relaxing effect, you could say, for the so-called person. But of course, yeah, that's just what appears to be happening. There's no one who's benefiting from that or who is even becoming more relaxed, let's say. But it seems upon listening to this or hearing this type of communication, the apparent person can seem to relax a little bit. Yeah, a lot of these beliefs or agendas about needing to get somewhere or having to be someone can seem to just collapse or soften slightly, which is just what appears to be happening. In the chat, the need for love is difficult to collapse though, everyone looking for love. Of course, you could say in this sense, the apparent person is looking for love. But of course, it will never, ever find this love. Totally impossible, because there's already no one looking. There's just love already, one could say. Love looking for love, you could say, as a total story, of course. But yeah, this idea of love, I mean, for me as well, this seemed like a very strong part of the message that I was attracted to. But of course, quite painful in the end, one could say, because there is no room for the person in love. Absolutely not. The person will never find this love. That hurts. Well, of course, if that's sort of heard, you could say it can seem quite painful, one could say. Because the person will never have this love because there already is no one. There's just love.
Of course, that isn't to say that love can't be felt. It's just not felt by anyone, is it?
It's in this sense of personal, like sort of relationship love, of course, but this sort of this unconditional love, which is suggested, one could say, is not a feeling in that sense. Of course, there's no one feeling unconditional love or experiencing that or knowing that. It's just totally intangible in this sense, and it just can't be explained.
And just realizing that even the message, even the preponderance of the message or sitting with the message, even if there appears to be a sense of I've got something, there's still just this appearing as the feeling of I've got something, and nothing is actually got by anyone.
Exactly.
Which is liberation in its own self, isn't it? It's because there just isn't anybody here listening anyway. So whatever's felt is this arising as the feeling, apparently, of that, whether it's personal, impersonal, or nothing. So yeah. Oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense. But to no one. Oh, thank you.
Hi, Izzy.
Hello.
Hi. So it feels like a constant death and rebirth, although it's difficult to say like what comes first and what comes next. In a way, it's not even a present thing, but it's just right now all this like snowballing together.
Well, there's not even those two, so to speak, snowballing together. There is no death or rebirth or birth. I mean, all of these sort of concepts, one could say, just totally collapse. So it's not even that they come together. It's just that they don't exist in the first place.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. In the chat, but just talking and sensing this connection in this meeting with people like you and the attendants is kind of love and healing. No. I mean, in the end, one could sense this to be love and healing in that sense, but that's just, of course, what appears to be happening. If there's a sense of love, if there's a sense of healing, one could say, that's just what appears to be happening, but already to no one. And so this sort of sense of things having to be love or having to be healed, there's just no having to anything, no need. So this apparent connection, I mean, there's obviously no two people or group that is connecting, but yeah, just apparently chatting on Zoom with friends is just what appears to be happening. There is no solution, exactly. It's not even a problem.
Izzy,
Hiya.
can someone, let's say, for just for sake of saying, who has lost a sense of self, can she integrate back into society? Because society assumes there are people and they have responsibility. So how would someone like that be a responsible citizen of a country or of an organization? What did you say?
Oh, well, you're probably asking the wrong person. No, I'm joking. Well, I mean, of course, there is no one who, so there's no Izzy who's lost a sense of self, who then has to integrate with all these people that still has a sense of self. There just is no sense of self in the first place. So there's no Izzy that's lost it and you that still got it, let's say, or society that still got it. There's already no one. So, I mean, of course, some behaviours that sort of may have occurred before, you know, having to present oneself to so-called society or impress the other or whatever, or fit in, seem to just collapse. But this whole thing of, well, how then does Izzy behave in normal society? I mean, they just neither exist in this sense. So just totally normal. And there's, of course, just this, in fact, this sense of specialness, one could say, comes from this apparent me. And so this sense of specialness just totally collapses, and there's just talking with friends, going out into town, whatever. There's no integration, there's no inner, there's no outer. I mean, this whole possibility of anything to be integrated just totally collapses.
Just hypothetical, all right? Suppose you win an award, okay? An award, Oscar award or something, and you go on the stage and you have to give a speech. What would you say?
If I have to go on stage and give a speech?
Yeah, would you say like, oh, like how do you express honestly on the stage? Would you be absolutely honest, like I didn't actually do this or something like that? Or would you be like a person and pretend like, yes, I worked hard at it and things like that?
Well, this sort of whole idea, one could say, is a misunderstanding, in the sense of there is, I mean, of course, there is no misunderstanding, but in the sense of there's no experience of there being no one. So there's no one who then pretends to be someone or pretends to be no one. There is no one, but of course there's just Izzy doing what Izzy does, apparently. So if Izzy goes to walk the dog, you know, totally normal. I get home, I've just walked the dog. It's just, there's no sense of that actually being I or me. So this whole thing with language, you know, well, I haven't just walked the dog because I wasn't there. I mean, this whole game just totally collapses. It's just totally normal. And there's no one to tell that there's no one, or impress. I mean, this can seem to happen after an apparent glimpse, one could say, when someone sees there's no one, or no one sees there's no one. The person seems to survive, and then sort of feel a need to tell others, well, you know, there's no one in there, and all, you know, and I mean, of course, who is there to tell? Okay, I'll just do a couple more in the chat and then we'll need to end. So, what about the love of family, especially my mother? Well, totally normal in this sense. Love for family, love for parents, siblings, friends. And in this sense, I mean, already this unconditional love, of course, already for no one. So just exactly the same, nothing happens. And one could say as a story, some relationships in this sense may even seem closer because there's less of this fear of self-protection or this sort of me motivation in an apparent relationship. So there just is no relating anymore. Of course not. And then just finally, is there any room for responsibility in this world? Well, apparent responsibility, one could say so, but of course, no, not there's no one who could possibly take responsibility for anything because there is no one. But of course, like I say, you know, walking the dog, I walked the dog, whatever, just totally normal. But there just is no one at the center of that or anyone or anywhere else. So this whole thing of responsibility, guilt, I mean, totally collapses in this sense. There's no one to feel guilty. Okay. Well, this is it then. Sitting on Zoom, talking for an hour or so is all there is. There is nothing else. There is nothing better. There's nothing worse. And what appears to be happening, so to speak, sitting on Zoom, is whole and complete, just as it is. It's unconditional love, you could say, already for no one. There's no possibility to get anything, to get anywhere. There just is simply what appears to be happening. Okay, well, the next meeting will be on Wednesday at 6 p.m. British time. And in April, I've got the intensive. If anyone wants to come along, you can just send me an email and the details are online. Okay, well, lovely to see you all. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Izzy.
Izzy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a
Bye-bye.
lovely day. Bye.